Developing Tomorrow's Leaders is a podcast that is all about educating, supporting, and inspiring the next generation of leaders. Your host, Antoine Thompson, or Coach T, has over 35 years' experience of educating, supporting, inspiring, and enhancing the lives of many young men and women. Join Coach T and his village of inspiration.
Welcome to Developing Tomorrow's Leaders with yours truly, Antoine Thompson, or Coach T. And I am super excited to be back with you for another episode. And today is an episode that I'm actually looking forward to because I'm expecting to learn a lot about something I did not know was being taught to young people at such a young age. Before we get into all that, I want to tell you a little bit about our guest. It is Dr. Shelby Kretz. She is the creator of Little Justice Leaders. It's an organization that provides social justice education resources for educators as well as families. They offer monthly subscription boxes for parents, teachers that provide resources each month to learn about social justice. Little Justice Leaders has sent over 17,000 learning kits to parents and teachers around the world. Dr. Kretz earned her Ph.D. in education from UCLA, and her research explores social justice education at the elementary school level. And over the past decade, she has worked with thousands of parents, teachers, and school leaders to bring social justice education to elementary school kids. And I am super excited to bring on Dr. Shelby Kretz. And welcome to Developing Tomorrow's Leaders.
Thank you so much, Coach T. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation.
Well, I am too, because, you think you know something, but then you find out you don't know something. And that's what this is all about. So for me, why I'm excited to have you on when you reached out about being on the show was about teaching social justice at such a young age is so important. And I know that I work primarily with middle school and high school students. So I'm thinking, well, the things that I'm teaching them is going to be really beneficial for them now and then moving forward, not thinking that those really important topics can be taught at an even earlier age. And social justice, talking about the idea of everybody having the same opportunities, regardless of where they are in their lives. So really appreciate you working this. But my first question I want to ask you first is, beyond the bio that I just read before you came on, is there anything else about you that you'd like for us to know about?
Well, I think the bio did a really good job, but I'm excited to come on and chat a little bit more. I guess kind of the one thing that maybe doesn't come through in the bio is that I've worked in so many different roles within the education system, from after-school program management to school counseling, to doing research in schools and curriculum development. So I've really gotten to work with students, teachers, and parents in so many different capacities. And I think I hope that has given me a lot of insight into, being able to work with everyone, because the school system, education system is really comprised of so many different folks.
I'm trying to figure out what order to use. I think I'll go ahead and start with this because I want to share with our audience some things that I found out that I was really blown away by, but also absolutely love. But I want to know, what was the inspiration? Because there had to be something that made you want to go down this path. And I think that's really important to start with.
Absolutely. So it was around the 2016 presidential election, and I was working on my Ph.D. at UCLA and working in schools in a variety of capacities with teachers and parents. And something I was hearing from so many teachers and parents was that they knew their kids were hearing what was going on in the media, on the news, or maybe reading about it online or hearing about it at school. But the adults just didn't know how to address it. And so what they told me was that they just were not going to bring it up. And I heard that over and over again. I'm just not bringing it up because I don't know what to say. But the truth was, and the reality was, that kids were hearing it, whether we wanted them to or not. They were developing perceptions and understandings about what was going on, with or without help from their parents, the caregivers, or educators to kind of make sense of it. And I realized this problem is only going to get worse as kids have more and more access to media, which has certainly become true over the past 8 years. And as so many different political issues become front and center, which again also has been true over the past 8 years, that if we don't have trusted adults guiding these conversations, then we're teaching kids that these topics are taboo. And we're also teaching them that they can't come to the trusted adults in their life with their questions. And if that's the case, then we are setting them up for developing bias, developing stereotypes, and in some cases, even going down rabbit holes that lead to hate and discrimination because they don't have a trusted adult to, learn these things from. And so that's when I was like, okay, I think we need to do something. And then it was in 2018 when I finally started Little Justice Leaders.
Well, that's just over, you said 2018?
Yeah, so it's been about 6 years now.
Yeah, so it was 6 years, but you put together, and this is kind of what I wanted to get to, you've put together quite the collaborative group of people to contribute and partner with. And I want to share just an overview of some of these amazing, the types of individuals, not just the individuals themselves, but we're talking about, you have social justice content producers, curriculum specialists, anti-bias and anti-racist educators, advocates, scholars, educators, authors, parents, activists, and attorneys. It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's been incredible. We've worked with over 150 activist educator partners to kind of put together these resources. And that really, I think it has to be that way, because no one really is an expert on social justice. It's too big of a term. There's too many topics covered underneath it, and none of us can really understand it all. There's always so much for all of us to learn. So I think collectively together is, such a better way to be able to learn from and with each other rather than, one person or even a small group of people, creating everything.
So what was your process of getting all of these individuals and organizations to partner with you? I think this is a great question, because I have a nonprofit too, and it's like, this is a great way to find out how you really partner with people and really get them to understand your mission, your passion, and your goal.
Yeah, so I think, it's certainly like snowballed over time. We did not start out with all these partners, but it's really been a matter of just organically trying to connect with folks, primarily on social media. So we've primarily used Instagram, and just reaching out to people whose work we admire, and, eventually kind of building up to a partnership. One thing that we did that really brings in a lot of partners is, for every learning kit that we created, we have multiple what we call kit leaders. And these are folks who are experts on that topic. And so we'll reach out to someone and say, hey, we're doing a kit on this topic. You're clearly an expert on this topic. Would you like to be a kit leader? And that's been a really good way for us to build connection and co-create meaningful resources together in a way that's very structured, makes it very easy for them, and also helps us connect with kind of a lot of people at once.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. But yeah, I was been reading about each one of them, and I think I saw 12 or 14 individuals on the site, and what they're bringing to the table, and it shows the heart of the passion of Little Justice Leaders, and everybody really buying into the goal and the roles that they have, and understanding that they truly do have the ability to educate, support, and inspire, the next generation of leaders. So if you don't mind, I'd love to get into some questions that I have that I think you're going to knock out of the ballpark. Not worried about that. But how do you think how does early education in social justice prepare kids to be the leaders of tomorrow?
Yeah, so the reason why I think it's so important to focus on early education, we all know that if depending on what we believe, many of us believe that we're, raised in a society that's steeped in issues of justice. So, for example, racism, sexism, heteronormativity, transphobia, and to be able to move forward, so many of us as adults have to unlearn so many of those things, and so many of them are invisible, and we don't even realize some of the ways that we think and believe are kind of rooted in those things that most of us don't want to be. We don't want to be racist, we don't want to be homophobic, but we have to unlearn years and years and years of socialization that's gotten us here. When we start with young kids, they don't develop the bias in the first place. They don't, come with this years of having to unlearn, when we can just start with the truth, start with the reality when they're younger. The other thing is they learn it so much faster that way. You talk to a kid about any one of these topics and they're probably going to get it faster than most adults will. And we see that with our students too. Like they really, it makes sense to them because kids have an innate sense of fairness. And again, they're not like pre-programmed with a whole bunch of bias that so many of us are programmed with. So I just think it's saving us a lot of time, a lot of hurt, a lot of frustration, and to, start with younger kids. It also kind of sets the foundation so that they can go so much farther with the work. Where, we have so many people, young adults, college students, young professionals, trying to unlearn and then become activists and become change makers. We've lost decades worth of work that they could have done to make the world better. Whether that's individual interactions with folks, which I think can change the world, like how you interact with other people, or, larger scale, like problematic things that you're bringing to your job, or biases that you're bringing to work. And we have the chance to raise a generation of kids who, I won't say they'll never have bias because they're still growing up in this world, but have so much less and so much more knowledge, awareness, understanding, words, language for this. I just think it's such a great opportunity to start with younger people.
Yeah, I like that because there's you mentioned about unlearning things, but at the same time it's like a fresh start. Because it gives an opportunity to speed up the process for their generation. So over time, it eradicates the high levels of racism, sexism, and the homophobia. What's interesting, and while you're describing that, I'm going to bring a personal touch to this, if I may, an experience. And I think
absolutely.
I think it brings home. My wife, I'm in an interracial marriage. We've been married for 20 years. Oh. And in the beginning, it was not very good. From her side of family, they weren't really accepting of the relationship. More so, especially with her uncle, did not like it at all. Didn't want to be around when I was around. Yeah. And over time, over the years, he started hearing so much about me, the person, how I was treating his niece, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. But before he left this world, he apologized to me for misjudging me. And not giving me the opportunity to learn who I was and the kind of person I was. But it's just I guess I get a little emotional here, but it's the impact and the power of people being viewed for who they are, for the character that they have, and not the color of their skin in my situation. But it's a perfect example of what can be taught sooner rather than later, because he was, much older and he lived his entire life thinking that way. Yeah. And ultimately, it took all that, and right before he passed, he realized I didn't have to be this way, but I was raised and taught to be that way.
Wow, that's such a powerful story and example. And I think it goes to show how hard it is to change. It sounds like it took him a very long time to work through that process. But also just thinking about like how simple it could be, because I think your story brings to light the fact that sometimes it's just about proximity. It's about knowing someone. It's about having that experience. So you hear, stories of someone who was maybe anti-LGBTQ plus, and then they had a child come out. And suddenly they had to rearrange everything that they thought they knew in order to, be there and love their child. And not everyone does that, but, some people do. And when we think about it in that terms, we can think, okay, gosh, just showing children a couple of picture books that positively, show examples of, in a positive light, of LGBTQ plus people or people with disabilities or people of color, then we're kind of wiring their brain to see that folks are individuals, and also to see positive examples of people who are different from them. And that really, I think, can change so much when you have positive examples, whether they're in real life or in children's media even.
Yeah. So this is a question that I thought of. I didn't really plan it, but just listening to how this conversation is going. How receptive are parents in this process? Because it kind of goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. Parents believe one thing, but here you are trying to teach their kids to be open-minded, treat people fairly regardless of race, and so on and so forth. How are parents receiving this?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, some parents are really excited, really supportive, really on board with what we're doing. And some are the opposite. Some are very, very much against what we're doing and don't want this anywhere near their children. And they have that right. And so many people are just needing to learn and unlearn for themselves. So they're, the large majority of parents can agree they want their kids to be kind. They want their kids to be thoughtful of the people around them, to be accepting of people who are different from them. Most people can agree with that. Like, you want to raise kind kids. You want to raise kids who are not going to be the bully and are going to accept people who are different. It gets scary when we use words like social justice because that has become so politicized. But when we really break it down for parents, what we're doing, we're teaching your kids through play, through crafts and arts, through children's books, just empathy, kindness, friendship, accepting others, diversity. Then you have so many more parents who are like, actually, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Like, that's what a lot of parents are really just trying to do when we kind of strip away like what's been politicized about the work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good. And I would assume there would be some parents that are against it. Some are like on the fence, and some are just blatantly, yeah, and I don't want to have any of that because they feel like it's going to poison their kids. I'm assuming they're probably thinking that,
Exactly.
which
We hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably hear that word too, right? I don't want to poison my kids.
Yeah, we hear a lot of words.
Yeah, some you can't say here.
Some I'm not going to say here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine.
Mhm.
So that kind of leads to, you mentioned it a little bit in that answer too, was I'd love to for you to share some of the activities and some of the things that you do have in those resource boxes that families and educators get each
Yeah.
month.
Yeah. So some of the like activities that are in there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So let me use an example. And so what we do with all of our activities is we try to make it so because we serve elementary age K-6, and kids come in at different levels, parents come in at different comfort levels, teachers come in at different comfort levels. So we try to make it so that you can keep it very simple, very like, this is the first time we're doing this, or also take it much deeper. So for example, in our anti-racism box, kids have the opportunity to paint a self-portrait and mix together paints to find like the perfect skin tone to match their skin tone. This is fun for all kids. All kids love to do art and, making a self-portrait, and they get to mix and match the colors until they find that perfect skin tone. In some cases, like, the teachers will have them name the color. So like they might name it something like, maple or oak or whatever it is that they want to name their color. And then they make their self-portrait. Now, if you're in kindergarten, you might just have the conversation, hey, look at how all of our colors are different. Isn't that so beautiful? We can put these up on the wall and all of our colors are different and they're all beautiful. And that's great. Whereas if you're, with fifth or sixth graders, you can get into a deeper conversation about race. What is race? Like, what does that even mean? How does our skin color have anything to do with, anything else in life? And then you can get into kind of a deeper conversation about what is race? What is racism? Why are we talking about this? And so that's what we try to do with the activities, make them so that there's the opportunity to go deeper, or maybe keep it simple, obviously, if we're working with our youngest learners, but still like have that lesson in there of like, look how beautiful it is that we all have, different skin colors. And now we get to do this fun activity of painting ourselves and sharing them with our friends.
So they're interactive and educational at the same time.
That's the goal.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the best ways to connect with those kids, especially at that age. Anything that's fun to do, they're going to see the fun in it, and they're probably going to see the end result as being fun. Mm-hmm. And there's no preconceived expectations of them when they go into these activities.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, we have to meet kids where they're at. We're not going to sit them down and give them an hour-long lecture when they're 6 years old. It's, you have to do what makes sense developmentally.
Why wouldn't you want to give them an hour-long lecture so that they can start fidgeting and crying
right.
and
running around?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's definitely not going to share. So I'm not sure if you can answer this, but I'll ask it because there has to be some measurable tools that you implement to really gauge the success of the program. And I didn't know if you could share some of that.
Yeah. So something we're working on, we haven't done any like formal research on the project, I did do my dissertation work on early elementary school social justice education, but kind of had to keep it a bit separate just to make sure we were avoiding any conflict of interest with that. But we're planning to kind of implement more wide scale research behind it. Now, that being said, what we do is we base what we create on the existing research. So looking at research about young people's learning and topics of justice and equity in terms of, what makes sense, what's beneficial, that kind of thing. So we try to rely on as much research as there is, and you would be surprised how little there is, or maybe you wouldn't, but there's not as much research out there as I would like to see. So it's something we want to do more of.
Well, but that makes it even that much more important because there
Yeah.
is a lot of research. That means that
Mm-hmm.
nobody's really put a lot of time, energy, and effort
Yeah.
into it. So for you to do it, I mean, that means you got a lot of work to do, though,
Oh, it
unfortunately.
does. It does. Definitely, there's a lot of work to do. I mean, there's a lot of research areas that kind of lay the foundation, but not quite exactly this, especially at the elementary school level. There's not a lot.
Yeah. So I'll share this quick story with you because we're talking about the younger kids. So a few years ago during COVID, I was helping out with school where I was coaching basketball with the junior kindergarten kids for
Oh,
PE.
yeah.
Yeah. So we're going outside and we're playing one day, and this one young little lady, we're coming in, and as we're going in, she stops, she turns to me. This is on a Friday. She turns to me and she goes, "Coach T, I'm having a sleepover at my house tomorrow, and you're invited, but you need to ask your parents first if it's
Oh,
okay."
that's so
And
sweet.
yeah, I laughed and I was like, "Yeah, you know what? I will be sure to ask. I think I have something to do, but if I don't, I'll be sure to ask my mom
Yeah.
if I can come." But it's the innocence of
The
kids is what I
innocence.
love,
Hmm.
and I bring that up only because the impact of little justice leaders and what you're teaching them. They're so wholesome. It's an
Hmm.
opportunity to keep them that way, but while learning along the way about everybody else. And just for the record, this young lady was white, so her not
Hmm.
viewing me other than Coach T the person
Yeah.
and knowing me for who I was or
Hmm.
who I am, that just speaks volumes for what we can teach kids.
It does. It does. I love that example. And they really are like these conversations sometimes are so easy because of the innocence. So I was babysitting two little girls once when I was in college, and one was 5 and her sister was 3. And the 3-year-old sister says to the older sister, like, I want to marry you when we grow up. And the 5-year-old said, we can't get married because we're both girls. And I said, actually, girls can get married, but you girls can't get married because you're sisters. And they both looked at me and they said, oh, okay. And then they went back to playing. And that was it. Like, that was the whole conversation. Like, it did not have to be a whole thing, obviously, at that young age, but like, they took it in and they're like, cool. Because kids are learning so much. Like, they just don't take it to be that big of a deal. They were like, okay, got it. Like, moving on.
Yeah, that's good. That's a great story. We could get
It
married.
was so cute. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So a question, this is a more serious question, but why do you think it's essential to center education around the concepts of humanity and respect?
Oh, such a good question. I just think we have to question why we have schools, right? Of course, to educate young people, of course, to prepare them for the workforce, all of these kind of traditional, reasons for having school. But like, what kind of young people do we want to come out of these school systems? Like every single, most of the kids in this country go through our school system. And I think it's so rare that we actually ask the question of like, what kind of kids do we want this system to produce? Like, what kind of humans do we want to come out of here? Not just what do we want them to know, but who do we want them to be? And I think we need to ask that question more. And I think if we did, most of us would agree. We want them to be kind. We want them to care about other people. We want them to, want to be a positive force in this world and do something. I don't even want to say something meaningful, but at least just be a good person in this world. And I don't think we talk about that enough. Like, who do we want to create in these schools?
Yeah, I don't think, but to your point, you mentioned it early on in this interview, is the school systems teach curriculum, and we're talking about life skills,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding people. and how to
Yeah.
interact with people, how to learn from people, how to gain knowledge from
Yeah.
others, that may not be like you, but
Hmm.
there's something that you can learn from them. And most
Yeah.
people are afraid of, well, I'm not part of this particular group, so
Yeah.
I don't need to know anything about them. Well, you
Hmm.
never know. Years later, you may be working side by side with that individual,
Yeah.
and they may be relying on you, or vice versa. And
Hmm.
you want to have some sense of some level of comfort in
Yeah.
order to do that. And if you don't know, if you're not open-minded enough to be willing to learn about them,
Yeah.
then you're making it tougher for yourself, not to mention tougher for them.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy, crazy.
Hmm.
Um, So let's get into inclusive education.
Hmm.
Um, how does the Little Justice Leaders ensure that its materials and activities are inclusive and acceptable to all children, regardless of their background and/or abilities?
Yeah. So that definitely comes back to our network of partners. That is why I will never be, creating all the materials myself. No one person can really think through all of the aspects of inclusivity, I think, no matter how long we've been doing this. So I rely on our partners to share their perspectives, share other ideas, people who might think of things that I'm not thinking of, challenge us in ways that we need to be challenged. The beauty of our community too, which I love what we've built, is that our subscribers, our community can say, hey, you missed the mark on this one. And that's happened a few times. And they'll say like, hey, you included XYZ or you talked about this. And, I think that's a problem and here's why. And then we can come back to everyone and say, hey, we just learned something and we want to share it all with you. And then like collectively we grow as a community. So I think that's why it is so important to do this work in community, because there are so many teachers who do this work on their own just because that's kind of the only way to do it right now. There isn't really a good network and not,
Right.
comprehensively. And then it makes the learning process so much slower, like, because we're all going to make mistakes. And it's going to take us much longer to figure out those mistakes if we're doing it alone than if we're doing it with, hundreds or thousands, or even just a few of our closest friends, like other people. We learn so much faster. And so for us, that's been how we do it and try to make sure. And we still have a ways to go. Like, there's always ways we can improve and be better. But that's how we try to push ourselves and challenge ourselves all the time.
No, that's great. I love the openness and the willingness to understand that you're not going to always be right, and
Mm-mm.
there's always opportunities to learn. And I think there's so many people that are experts that have egos to bruise, and they're
Mm-hmm.
afraid to be open. Yeah, I always tell kids all the time when working with, hey, listen, I don't claim to know everything. And I tell them, I say, I'm going to be a better coach with every child that I interact with,
Yeah.
because they're going to teach me a different way to coach, a better way to coach, a better way to connect with kids that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know about until you encounter, because every child's different. Every child learns differently. So all those interactions are going to be different. Some kids are more vocal than others,
Mm-hmm.
and others are, so, I think that's great. Now,
Yeah.
I actually have one more question for you, and then I'm going to really open up, let you share whatever it is I did not ask, and
Okay.
educate us even more so. And
Awesome.
that's basically is about schools, and how can schools and communities work together to create a more inclusive educational environment for kids?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing is always going to be connecting with your community. So, if you're not, as a school, like deeply connected to your students, caregivers, and parents and their families, that's a great place to start. Connect with them. There's probably a wealth of diversity, knowledge, awareness that you can draw on in that like micro community of people directly connected to the school. Then you also have the larger community that the school's in, people who maybe aren't directly connected to the school. I mean, there's no way to do this work that's not like in community. So definitely kind of start there. Start with the people who are connected to the people who are in your building every day. Of course, I have to say, like, Little Justice Leaders provides lots of resources and community for this. So if you're not finding it at your school, or even if you are and you're trying to push it further, come find us. We're here to help for anyone who wants to do this work and create more inclusive learning environments at home or at school.
Awesome, awesome, great answers, by the way. So before I turn over to you, well, I was getting ready for this. I meant to say it earlier. I'm going to say it now. When I first started reading about when you submitted your information, I started
Mm-hmm.
leaving. And I'm always joking. I'm always trying to think of a funny um, way to think about something. So I'm
Hmm.
reading this. It said Little Justice Leaders, and you know what I'm thinking, right? DC Comics,
Of course,
Little Justice League.
we
And I'm
get that all
thinking,
the time.
yeah, I'm like, what are you doing? Creating superheroes? Little mini superheroes?
Kind of.
Yeah, right. I like that. It may be something you would think about. You know, you can put a
Hmm.
little twist on that, right? Because that's what
Yeah,
you
play
are.
on that. Because we really,
Yeah,
that is really what we're doing. These
yeah.
kids are superheroes.
That's what I was thinking.
Hmm.
So I want my credit if you
To go,
do it.
okay, yes,
No,
I
I'm
will credit
kidding.
you. I will.
No, I don't. I don't need that. I'm just saying. But no, because that's really what I thought. If you think about it,
Hmm.
they're like superheroes. I mean, they're really
Yeah,
changing the world. They're starting young, and they have an opportunity to make an impact. So no, I
so
love
true.
that, man.
It's so true.
Little Justice League leaders, League of Leaders.
League
Oh,
of, ooh, okay, that's
yeah,
good. That's
that's
good.
good. That's good. You write that one down. Hey,
Yeah, I will.
I'm giving you that one for free. I'm giving you
Oh,
that one
wow.
for free.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Um, so really, so I'm going to turn it over to you because I'd
Mhm.
love for you to share whatever it is I didn't ask and what you'd like for us to know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is, if you have kids in your life, whether they're your children, whether you're a coach, a teacher, an educator, an aunt, uncle, grandparent, whatever that might be, like you can start this work, even if you're nervous, even if you don't feel like an expert, like you really don't have to. Sometimes it's those baby steps. As we learn, we can pass that on to the kids in our lives. So start today, like start trying, start fumbling through these conversations. It can be hard. It can be scary and confusing. But you are the adult who the kids in your life look up to, and you can be that trusted person who can help educate them and help make sure that they are developing empathy and that they are centering humanity in what they learn. So I think that's so important. I'll talk a little about the programs we offer. We're actually kind of changing our model a bit. So we're not going to be doing monthly boxes anymore. We'll still have learning boxes, but we wanted to make something that was going to be more accessible at a more accessible price point for more folks. Because I know that a lot of educators and families, it's just a bit out of reach to get the learning kits, and unfortunately we can't make them for any less. So we are launching a new digital community where folks can access all of these resources, connect with the community like what we've been talking about today, come to training events to kind of learn how to do these things and actually connect and face to face. So lots of really cool opportunities in there. So we're launching that actually next week, so it should be launched by the time that this comes out. And it's just a really good opportunity to connect if you are someone with kids in your life and you care about social justice and you want to continue educating yourself and start having these conversations or continue having these conversations. We're hopefully creating this space that's going to be lots of resources and kind of everything you need to make that happen. So check out littlejusticeleaders.com. Check us out on Instagram as well. We give out tons of free content there too. So lots of opportunities to learn if this is something that interests you.
All right, all right. And as you were saying that, you just led right into what I was going to ask you next is how people can get in
Mm-hmm.
contact with you. And for those that are not watching, the website is littlejusticeleaders.com.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Kretz's email is shelby@littlejusticeleaders.com.
Yep.
Instagram is Little Justice Leaders. Facebook is, guess what? Little Justice Leaders. TikTok, Little Justice Leaders. And maybe the YouTube will be Little Justice League of
It is.
Leaders. Sweet.
Maybe.
Hey, maybe. I'm gonna get maybe somebody draw some superheroes, some kids superheroes. That's what you get an artist.
Oh, that'd be
My
awesome. I
niece,
do.
my
Yeah.
niece, my niece is an artist. I'm gonna see if she'll do that
Okay.
for me. This is a project. See what she can come up with. That would
Yeah.
be so
Okay. I need to
cool.
talk to your niece, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be awesome,
Awesome.
awesome.
Yeah.
So this has been phenomenal. This has been very educational for me, inspirational as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate it. Now, before we go, I want to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests, and there's
Okay.
no right or wrong answer, but it is if you will share with us the individual or individuals that have been most influential in your life and why.
Okay. I'll go with individuals because I just have a hard time choosing one. Actually, you know what? I can talk about one person in particular and then kind of broadly. So I'd say like as individuals, I'm going to say mentors. I have had so many meaningful mentors in my life in various stages and phases of my life from the time I was a kid until now. And I'm particularly grateful to the folks who have helped me learn about justice especially the folks who didn't have to, like people who have educated me along the way, because I was very ignorant when I was younger, like so many of us who grew up, in our society without a lot of awareness about justice, about our role in it, about race, gender, disability, immigration, even climate justice, like all of the things. And so I'm particularly thankful to the folks who took the time to educate me when they really didn't have to, and it wasn't their job. One person in particular, her name was Dr. Patty Cunningham. She supported my work in after-school programming when I was just getting out of college, and she was such a huge supporter of me. She really encouraged me to go to grad school. She wrote my letters of recommendation for that, and just was my biggest cheerleader in everything that I was doing. And she called me in when I needed called in on learning, and helped me kind of just develop how I see the world today. And sadly, she passed while I was in graduate school, way too young. And I think that her mark on the world was tremendous, and would have been even more so if she would have, been able to live out a longer life. But I'm just so grateful that our paths crossed, and that she was such a huge cheerleader to me. And I'm just constantly thinking of all the lessons that I learned from her.
That's awesome. And I'm sure she's looking down on you and very proud of the work you're doing and the work you've done and continue to do. So really appreciate you sharing that. And like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just one of those things, questions I like to find out what inspires people to do it. And based on what this podcast is about, we're all inspired by different people. And sometimes it's multiple people. Sometimes it's one. Sometimes it's the person you least expect to be that inspiration until later in life. You realize, hey, it was that person that made a difference in my life. Yeah,
absolutely. So true.
Well, Dr. Kretz, has been great. Before we go, I want to share that I also co-host another podcast called Teen Speak, Empowering Today's Youth. It's a podcast for teens, about teens, and starring teens. And I co-host this with my good friend, Keith Senzer. He is also a youth leadership and empowerment coach. And we interview middle school, high school, and college students. And the great thing about this is the kids reach out to us to be on the podcast. We don't reach out to them. And they come on and they share the challenges and struggles that they've gone through in their life. Some are mental health issues, bullying, body shaming, you name it. But the great thing about it is they share the strategies that they've used to overcome these challenges. So they are a voice for the voiceless, and opens up the opportunity for kids to not feel as though they're alone in certain situations. So if you would like to be a guest or know someone that would like to be a guest, Keith and I both have forms on our website. His is shiftyourpower.com and mine is coachtcorner.com. And we would love to have you on the show to be the voice of the next generation of leaders. Dr. Kretz, again, I cannot thank you enough for your time and your knowledge, your experience, and for the work that you're doing. And as I said before, I wish you continued success and get those little Justice League of Leaders going.
Well, thank you so much, Coach T. This has been really fun. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, absolutely. It's been my pleasure. And as always, I am Coach T. I'm here to educate, support, and inspire the next generation of leaders. So along with Dr. Kretz and myself, we look forward to you having a great day, weekend, and month and year. See ya.
Coach T's new book, The Ultimate Guide to Success for Preteens and Teens, is the perfect resource for preteen and teen personal growth and development skills. It breaks down in detail his SEA of Success program and its applications in 10 key development areas. The program applies Coach T's 3 key components: simplicity, effort, and attitude. It includes some of his success stories, as well as former and current student testimonials. Order your copy today on Amazon. Available in paperback and hardback.